Welcome to the Lighthouse Sessions. I'm excited. I have my new friend Steve Harper with me. And Steve and I, we're already old friends. We've spent about 10 minutes together. Steve, why don't you tell my audience just a little bit about who you are, and then we'll talk about your pond and your ripples.
Yeah, well, I am Steve Harper. I live in Austin, Texas. Married, have two amazing kids, 21 and 25. And I've been an entrepreneur since I was 22, basically because I'm not employable. I like steering my own ship. I like doing, things my way. I own a software company in Austin, and then I also have this other sort of persona where we talk about the ripple, which is sort of all spun out of a book I wrote called The Ripple Effect: Maximizing the Power of Relationships for Your Life and Business. And I'm all about connection. I'm grew up shy and very, very introverted, and realized as an entrepreneur that was not going to work out too well for me. You eventually have to talk to people to get food on the table. And so I learned some ideas and strategies to cope as a shy, introverted individual that helped me excel as an entrepreneur and eventually sell a company. And when I did that, that's when, the idea struck to write the book and maybe share these ideas with what I thought was going to be a pretty small audience, small, meaning that there are very few people that admit that they're, introverted, right? And almost everybody that you find, especially these days on social media and whatnot, always seem to be so extroverted. So I thought I was really serving a really small market. And it turned out that almost everybody runs into imposter syndrome and challenges and frustrations when it comes to connecting with other humans, because it turns out it's not as easy as we think it should be.
I love it. And to your introvert point, I want to share a couple of weird things. But number one, Susan Cain's TED Talk changed my life.
I love that talk. Yep.
And reading her book, like I laughed my butt off when she talked about, going off to camp with a trunk full of books. And I'm like, oh, you're one of us,
Nerd.
Exactly. And by the way, I had this weird aha moment. I talked to a lot of people who are speakers, and I helped them write books. But I tried to take people who wrote books and turn them into speakers. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. And it turns out, this is just Jeff's unscientific view of the world. Most of the speakers are either extroverted or leaning extroverted, whereas most authors are introverted.
Yeah, I had a really good friend when my book came out. She said, well, you need to go talk about this, right? I'm like, oh, hell no, I'm an introvert. I'm not doing that.
That's why I wrote the book.
Yeah, I'm like that. I'm a writer, and not even a good one at that. I don't want to be a really horrible speaker. Public speaking was not my strong suit. I was really good in situations where one-on-one conversations or in small group settings, but getting up in front of, anybody more than 5 people really gave me immense anxiety. But she didn't actually let it die there. And I really owe her a debt of gratitude, because when I brought out the book and she told me this, and I'm like, oh, no, au contraire, mon frère. I'm not a speaker. She said, well, too late. I booked you a speaking gig with the American Marketing Association. Like right out of the gate, like people that are really good at brand building and talking about their brands and doing all this, like right into the fire. And I remember the day I worked for weeks on this thing. I practiced, I prepared, and I still felt like I was Mr. Robot trying to speak, right? And the day comes, and it's at this country club in Austin, and I'm in the bathroom sweating bullets, trying not to like make it obvious that I'm about to have a heart attack. And one of the guys that I've known for a long time said, oh, he walks in the bathroom, he sees me at the mirror, he's like, dude, I had no idea you were going to be, the speaker today. He's like, I didn't know you were a speaker. I'm like, I'm not. And he goes, wait, he's like, you picked the AMA to be your first speaking gig? And I'm like, no, I didn't pick it. I got thrown here. I mean, and he's like, dude, good luck. I mean, these people eat people alive, right? And I literally had that moment of, do I run and just disappear, or do I show up and do things differently? And even though I had prepared for weeks about this written speech, I could just tell that wasn't going to go well. And so I got up and actually just said, look, this is not my natural thing. This isn't something I'm always comfortable doing, but I do have a message I think that will resonate with virtually everybody. And then I was hooked. I mean, I still feel exactly the same way I did as that guy sitting in the bathroom wanting to run every single time before I take stage. but I know that I'm actually doing the work I was destined to do.
I love that. And I think that's one thing I would pull out of this story for our fellow introverts. There is the misconception we can't speak. No, we can speak. We just choose not to.
That's right.
We'd rather be at home with our books. But when we do speak, we speak quietly and we say big things, in my opinion.
Well, I think your opinion is absolutely accurate, because I've actually told introverts that they are the best connectors on the planet, because they're exceptional at asking good, thoughtful questions. They're good about being good, authentic listeners, and they actually hear what's being said and then manifest that into further conversation, which gets the other person they're talking to more comfortable. And then eventually it does come back. But once you've sort of taken away the pressure of feeling like you have to perform. And that's where I think most people really struggle when it comes to connecting or networking, or, just actually living amongst other humans, is how to have a conversation with another person that you may not know or not know at all, may not know well or not know at all. But at the end of the day, being able to do it in a way that really makes it comfortable so that you can ease into it. And introverts are the best connectors because they pick up on things that most people just miss. And I even think, I always tell extroverts this as well. You have to, even though you might be the person that feels really good talking to a complete stranger or being on stage or whatever, you have to be super cognizant you're not sucking all the oxygen out of the room, because you'll lose really valuable assets, because there'll be a lot of introverts that you will potentially have on your team or within your organization or maybe in the audience that are sitting there just dying because they can't find their in there, right? So trying to make it cognizant on both sides that extroverts can always be better, and introverts are always starting from a place that they're probably stronger and more confident than they imagine.
I love it. And I think that, to me, watching Susan's TED Talk was recognize, like, I always felt that I wasn't enough, because I see all these extroverts in a room and they're working the room. And I'm like, I'm the guy in the corner having a deep conversation with 2 or 3 people. And I was like, oh, I can't network, or, I'm not good at networking. But what I realized was that I'd forged 2 or 3 deep relationships in a conversation. Whereas some of the people I knew that were extroverts, they'd work the entire room, shake everybody's hand, and then leave. And people go, who the heck was that?
Yeah. They blow through like the networking tornadoes, or they act like the networking vampires, and they're just trying to, suck your soul by any means possible to see if you're a valid prospect for their product or service. I always tell people, especially for introverts, I love that you shared that, because I'm very similar. I just don't love those environments, even though I get the sort of the moniker of being a networking expert. I'm a really good connection expert. I'm really good at figuring out where to find my connections and build them correctly, in as respectful and authentic way as I possibly can. But even in a networking environment, for the introverts that are watching or listening to this, one of the tricks of the trade that I've done as an introvert is, I get my little plate of food or my drink, and I then look to the corners of the room, and there will inevitably be somebody over there hiding out. And I walk up and I'll generally say, look, I have a running bet with myself. Which of us between you and me is having a worse time at this event? And it just starts the conversation in a very fun, easy manner. And what's cool about that is once you're connecting with this other person, there's usually 3 other corners of the room, right? So you can go find your tribe, and next thing you know, you've met people that are as uncomfortable about being in that environment as you are, but now you're actually creating an environment where it's safe for them to communicate and connect.
And I think a lot of people really appreciate that. For what it's worth, I'm the guy at conferences. I always arrive the day before. I'll scope out the place, and I find out the little quiet corners where, ooh, I bet this would be a great place for conversations. And then what I'll do, if there's a loud event like a dance or something, I'll just go sit in these quiet corners, and the introverts find me. Yep. And those are the people that we find ways to help each other. And it's like, oh, this is exhausting, and I've had one too many concussions. So music just, conference music drives me nuts.
Yeah.
So I always know where the quiet spots are. And it's amazing how many other people find those quiet spots and go, oh, thank God there's it's like an oasis in this madness. So.
Oh yeah, I think that's a brilliant strategy. One of the things that we've done before as well, and I've suggested this to a few people, I've tried it, works brilliantly, is just taking a regular piece of copy paper and folding it over and then writing the words "open for conversation." And how many interesting people will just come to have that, an interaction with you just out of curiosity.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times it doesn't even actually have to be, introverts connecting with other introverts. It's about creating an environment and an opportunity to have a meaningful conversation where you think back to going back in that main conference room, or you go into the networking event that they always seem to do and do them so poorly.
Yeah.
But it's
the loud music, the food.
Yeah. And people that are there just doing the elevator pitch. I have never once closed a deal on an elevator pitch, and everybody swings for the fences like the grand slam of great opportunity is there in that 15 to 30 second quippy elevator pitch.
Yeah.
And people don't give a crap. A, they don't hear 90% of what you told them, and B, now you basically have said, oh, okay, this is how we're going to dance, right? So now I have to share something business wise, and it's this tango that is not comfortable for either party. And I think oftentimes if you can find those quiet moments, those opportunities, even if it is before the next session starts and somebody sits down next to you and you just say, hey, I'm Steve. What's your name? And, I learned that it's Jeff, and it's like, I love that shirt. Like, I look for what I call connection points, things that really stand out and make a difference to me that kind of make that person memorable. And so before we started recording, I mentioned your shirt, right? I would say that because I love that. I love that it's vibrant. I love that it's kind of, super eye-catching, and it's designed to be a conversation starter if you allow it to be.
Exactly. And it also avoids some conversations that don't need to be started. So.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Like, so what do you do for a living? I hate that question.
Yeah. And it's a funny thing, and a lot of people, oh, you're anti-extrovert. No, I'm not. I'm just really aware of who I am as an introvert.
Yeah.
We like deep conversations, and one of the things that we don't do well is small talk, because I don't care about the weather. I don't want to hear your take on the weather. You want to talk about how we're going to accomplish world peace? Yeah, let's have a chat.
Sure.
But you want to discuss meteorology? Nah, I'm bored.
You have to know your limits. Yeah, of course. Got to know your limits. Well, and I think a lot of times, in some respects, I think small talk gets a bad rap because people are so crappy at it, right? And they don't ask a small talk question. They don't ask a well-placed conversation in a small talk scenario. They do default to the weather, or they default to something that feels, oddly familiar to them. And the reality is that you just got to create an opportunity to have an interaction, and then you got to quickly transition that into something of meaning, right? And I think oftentimes, especially, I think introverts are really, really good. They've got the BS radar like you wouldn't believe. They can tell when somebody is being a little fake or a little pompous, and the pitch is coming, right? But introverts are really good at steering that conversation in a way that really kind of makes sense. Like if I was at a conference, you and I were sitting next to each other, I wouldn't really talk about the weather, but I'd be curious as to what motivated you to come to the conference, or where the hell do you get those cool shirts, right? One of my best business, I would say best, interactions that I ever had that ended up being super, super profitable simply came from my commenting on somebody's really cool sneakers at a conference that I'd never seen before. And that led into, hey, where are you from? And what brought you here? And where's the, what are you hoping to get out of this event? And next thing you know, you have kind of a running buddy, right? You got somebody there that's either going to go to another session and maybe you regroup and, share notes, or, you meet up for lunch, or you catch a drink at the bar, but you make those interactions feel like they're substantive, and people will respond in kind, but you got to make it, you got to get there first. And small talk, when done poorly, stops it at the door.
Yeah. And I think it's the sincerity of it. I'm not kidding, Steve. I spoke at an event. I was teaching sales skills, and my entire thing was building an authentic relationship, being genuine and sincere. And somebody raised their hand. It turns out I was supposed to be in a room full of accountants who get it. But I accidentally got booked into a room full of life insurance salespeople.
I love it.
And I was like, I was speaking to them because I was told they were a room full of accountants, but for some reason, no accountants showed up, just these insurance people. Right at the end, a guy raises his hand and says, "I'm sorry, Jeff. I love what you're doing. This is amazing stuff. One minor detail." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. What's the detail?" He says, "You didn't tell us how to fake sincerity." And I was just, my heart sank, and I'm like, "Oh, I am so in the wrong room." And I said, "Okay," I was speechless, and I said, "Okay, show of hands, how many here think this question is the question to ask right now?" Entire room raised their hand, and I went, "Oh my God." And I said, "So for the record, you can't fake sincerity by definition."
No.
But that's the thing. I'm genuinely curious about people, thus the podcast. And it's funny because people are like, "Oh, you have a podcast, you can't be an introvert." I'm like, how many people do I have as guests? One. Now let's talk about the pond and the ripples. And I'm just going to give you a backstory here, because when COVID hit, everybody told me networking was dead. And I had friends who ran networking groups. They shut them down. They said, "You can't network online. You can't use video conferencing." And then I read The Go-Giver, and I underlined 2 words in the book as I was reading it, and it grabbed my soul. It was the words, "the connector." And I was like, that's who I want to be.
Yep.
And I'm happy to say, I started stalking Bob Berg, and now he is just an amazing guy. I've got to know him and his co-author, John David Mann. But that lit the spark in me that it was like, okay, I'm an introvert and I'm a connector.
Yeah.
And I never resonated as a networker, but a connector, I got it. So how was the pond created? Where did that come from? And then let's talk about ripples. And I love your sign behind you that actually says ripples.
Yeah, it's my moniker, @RippleOn, where you can find me on almost every social platform. I would say that the pond actually was several years in the making, trying to find a way to teach people how to connect online in an authentic way that isn't, well, for lack of a better description, prostituted like it is on most social platforms, right? Facebook, even, Instagram and LinkedIn to a certain degree are getting this way. You have to have intention, especially online, and you have to be very committed to turning what is generally a 2D conversation into something more. And so what I have always tried to profess to people is that, one of the best things that you can do is leverage technology to your advantage. The technology brings the people to us. If you think about this, Jeff, like, we are the most connected than we've ever been in the history of mankind, right? If I wanted to learn about you, I can go to Google. And now I can go to AI, right? And I can ask questions and learn about your work in a deep, meaningful way, but that doesn't translate necessarily to how I interact with you, right? You've got LinkedIn because, people feel like, hey, we've got to be connected professionally in that regard. You've got Facebook, so we can pretend we're friends, but we really don't know anything about each other. And then you got Instagram, TikTok, and, Twitter or X or whatever the hell Elon will call it today or tomorrow. And the reality is those are just opportunities to engage. But what you do with the engagement is really, really the most important next step, which is just throwing a heart up or a like or doing these little ancillary social proofing mechanisms that are designed to be built into these platforms to show user activity and adoption. They're not really designed to actually help you further the relationship. A conversation that happens is Jeff and I meet online. We learn a little bit about each other. One of us comes with a good question that says, Jeff, what is something I could do for you today that you're really needing some help with? Or what's a big thing that's going on in your world that, maybe I could add some value? Maybe I've got a connection. Maybe I have an idea. Maybe I'm someone that would be just happy to listen or brainstorm with you. Trying to show up and have authentic value without forcing an actual particular outcome is where I think most people fail on these online platforms. So with the pond, we built this. It's called the pond for a reason, just to keep us with the water methodology. But your pond can be as large or as small as you want it. But it's really geared around being around other people that want to make a difference out there in the world.
Oh, Steve, it looks like we lost your audio.
See what's going on. How about there?
There we go.
Oh, that's
there we go.
Yeah, just automatically muted. Maybe it was trying to tell me I was talking too much. But really, at the end of the day, the online is about trying to figure out how to show up and have a better engagement. And that's not going to happen through those tools. It's going to happen through these kinds of platforms. It's going to happen through picking up the phone or meeting for coffee or a beer and engaging people in a way that says, okay, I have something of value to bring to the table. You have something of value to bring to the table. How can we do this for, a unified good if we can?
I love that.
It's in purpose behind it.
I love that. And, I created the podcast. Turns out there's a band called the Lighthouse, and they actually had an album called the Lighthouse Sessions. I'm waiting for my cease and desist letter, but I think we're different enough. We're not going to confuse people. So let's talk about the ripple effect. And for what it's worth, when I was a kid, that was one of my favorite pastimes. When I was stressed, I'd go sit with this little pond and I'd throw rocks in it and watch the ripples. And my dad got really annoyed because those rocks were coming from our gravel road. And he's like, we pay for those rocks. And I'm like, the pond dries up every year. I'll pick the rocks.
I'll go get more.
It's like, fine.
Yeah.
So I love the analogy. And I think I want to hear what you think when you talk about the ripple effect, because I can visualize it and it makes sense to me.
Well, so here's the thing. The ripple is any action, big or small, that makes an impact on another person, right? And I think a lot of times we think there has to be these grand gestures or these big things that happen in order for it to stand out. But the reality is life presents us opportunities every single day to create ripples. It's up to us whether we want to create that as a positive ripple or a negative ripple. If I walk into my office and I look pissed off and angry and frustrated, and I've got this doom and gloom attitude, well, guess what? That spreads like wildfire through an organization, right? People avoid you, or people, adapt and take over your same persona. And what's funny is that you end up going like, everybody in this world is pissed off and angry because that's what you're presenting out there to the world. So that's what the world serves back up to you. If you're open and you look beyond your phone and you look outward and you are open to and approachable to new opportunities to connect and engage with people, and you have a general upbeat, positive attitude, well, the world tends to put more of those people in your path. I'm a big believer that the people that are supposed to show up in our life show up at exactly when they're supposed to. But most of us are too distracted or too focused on our own craziness, our own noise, to actually recognize and understand that. So how do you leverage the ripple? Very much like that, imagery that you shared. You take one of those stones from your dad's driveway, toss that in, and your action, whatever that action is, could be holding a door open. It could be a well-placed compliment. It could be like just a great introduction, like G. Brian Benson gave to us to say, hey, you guys will get along. You guys should get together and do an interview. Those are all actions. That rock, we have no idea how big a splash that's going to make, how deep that resonates with the other person. But those ripples, this is science. They ripple out and they also ripple back. So my contention is the more that we can do positive things out there in the world, even if it is not because we feel like somebody's watching or because we feel obligated to do it, but it's part of our DNA. It's part of what we do to show up and represent in the world as our authentic selves. Those ripples ripple out and they always ripple back. And so I always remind people that, you are in control, but if you are really, really cognizant of it and you can be tuned into your world, whether it be at work or in your personal life, there will be countless opportunities to create positivity out there in the world if you allow yourself to do so. So I tell people, make a commitment to create one positive ripple a day. That could be picking up a piece of trash. That could be complimenting the barista at the coffee shop. That could be saying hello to an older person that's eating alone. There's countless ways to just make a small impact. It may be small for you, and it really is no skin off your nose if you do it. But for them, that could be like the greatest thing that happens to them all day. So that's really the whole thing. It's about a philosophy to make a difference. And if you turn that back around to business, like your prospects, your clients, the people you work with, the people you work for, there's opportunities to engage and create ripples with them every single day, even if it is just Hey, Jeff, you're doing a great job. We were so damn lucky to have you as part of the team. I just wanted to thank you for that. Those things make indelible marks on their heart and their head. And you will definitely differentiate yourself as an individual out there in the world if you do it.
I love that. And I think, honestly, I've heard people who are like, well, why should I be nice to someone? I'll never see the benefit of it. And I'm like, what an attitude.
Well, and sadly, that's what we have been cultured that way. I blame our parents. I blame our school system. I blame our athletic events that we grew up and participated in as kids. I sort of broke my life down into various stages, right? And when you think about it, as young people, we are told, kids are to be seen, not heard, right? So be quiet, don't ask questions, don't be inquisitive. So we lose a little bit of that curiosity factor. We get into school, we have more of that. Be quiet, sit down, pay attention, listen, only answer when you're, asked a question, that kind of thing. And then around third grade, now like things like grades start to matter. Who's better? Little Timmy better on his spelling bee than you were? Or, who's sitting at top of the best grades for math or whatever? And I think the challenge with that is that, introverts and extroverts start to get, divided at that point. Then you get into those higher school years, you get into sports where competition and winning is all that matters. Yeah. And then we're supposed to graduate from high school or our university journey, and then we're supposed to know how to get along with everybody, especially when nobody actually takes us by the hand and says, kid, let me show you how to get along with the other kids in the sandbox. And you've been cultured to have an attitude of what's in it for me, what's my outcome, what am I benefiting from, more so than what's in it for, the person sitting across the table from me. So when I first brought out my book, I thought, the introverts didn't get that. And that's why I thought I was sort of accomplishing. But what I found is people from all different ages, all different demographics, all different countries, all of us are still trying to figure out how to be relevant to our own little worlds. And the way you do that is become the person that people really want to be around. The people that, that really see value in what you bring to the table. It may be quiet because you're introverted, or, you may be the, hard charging extrovert, but you're really cognizant of what your impact is to the other people around you.
And, it's fascinating because I have a friend who's an extrovert, and she's like, now that you're aware of being an introvert, does that mean we can't hang out? And it's funny because her husband is an extreme introvert, and I've been giving her some insights, and I'm going to share something random because it was funny to me. When she gets mad, she gives him the silent treatment. And I said, okay, you're an extrovert. To you, that's punishment. To him as an introvert, he's going,
thank God.
And she's like, wait, he enjoys the silent treatment? And I'm like, oh yeah, you're not punishing him.
Yeah.
And she's like, I'm going to go tell him exactly how I feel. And I'm like, there's the punishment you were looking for.
And it will be perceived exactly like that too.
Yeah. But the funny thing is she's a therapist, a counselor. And it was her aha moment that when he's not talking to her, she feels he's punishing her. And I'm like, so it's fascinating. Like, my kids are learning all kinds of crap that they'll never use in their life. Like, they can quote dates from Canadian history, and I'm sorry, but who cares? Yeah. It's rare in life that somebody comes up to me on the street and says, okay, what year was the Battle of whatever? And I'm like, I don't know. I'll Google it. But zero effort to learn. Number one, I think we need to learn, you talk about outward ripples. We need to learn who we are. Yes. And then we need to learn to ask for what we want. We need to set boundaries. Then we need to learn about others around us. And it just fascinates me that none of that is being taught in school today.
No, and it's not even taught, just in school, but even when you get onboarded with those first jobs or any job at this point, everybody's expected to understand how to get along with the other people that you're around. And very few of us know how to do that because we're coming from limited experience, and or we have, sort of predetermined discriminatory thoughts about other people. And that's not, not necessarily based on religion or race. That's just our environment and how we grew up. And I always tell people that when I talk to leadership teams and, they're thinking about bringing me in to speak to their organizations, inevitably I'll have somebody on the executive team say, yeah, we're good on soft skills. We don't need the soft skills. We're more about technical and tactical. It's like, well, you could be the best, technical, tactical person, but if you can't get along with anybody else, your idea goes nowhere, right? Yeah. And so when I hear the word soft skills, and that's where I often get lumped in, I sort of take offense to it, and I have to always correct people that, right, soft implies simple and easy, and there's nothing simple and easy about connecting with another human being. And if you're extroverted, it feels less intimidating, but still hard. For introverts, it can feel like a death sentence in a big, big way if nobody gives you the roadmap on how to do it. And so I tell one of the big things that I tell leadership teams is, how good. Let's just see how good you are in terms of your core network, right? How many people would, at a moment's notice, drop whatever they're doing to support you or help you in whatever capacity? I was speaking in St. Louis a couple of years ago for a team of executives, about 150 of them, and I asked everybody, how many of you think you have a network of real value, right? And like just rock solid. 100% of the hands went up in the room, and I said, all right. So something happened. You're here at this breakfast, but it got discovered your CFO has been embezzling. You don't have money to make payroll. You have a major defect in a product, and you don't know. Nobody knows how to fix it. It's falling on you. Or hey, your boss didn't know you were coming to this event, and things are hitting the fan back at the office, and now they are super unhappy that they can't find you or locate you. And you get to the office and you get fired. Right? Or you go through a divorce, or you have a death of a child, or something significant in your world. How many of you have 10 professional connections and 10 personal connections that would drop everything to help you do or deal with whatever you have? Now, how many of you, if you're really honest with yourself, how many of you have networks of real value? 2 people out of that entire room raise their hand.
Yeah.
And the reality is we're excellent at collecting connections. There's a program here in the States, you guys might see it up there in Canada as well, called Hoarders. I think all these different platforms give us the ability to hoard all these connections. Yeah. But if you can't tell yourself how you know that person, what is important to that person, or what you find of value to be a part of that person's world, those things are just acquaintances. Yeah. And so I'm all about helping people understand to go about this process and create the right kinds of ripples to build the kinds of authentic relationships you really want to have. And in every aspect of your life, it takes work, it takes time, it takes focus, but it honestly takes a commitment to do it and do it well. And when we don't have the baseline of a company to tell us how to do it or show us how to do it, or we expect, to pick up the book on networking and then all of a sudden, magic is going to happen. Doesn't work that way. You got to put in the work. You got to, there's blocking and tackling required.
I love that. And, it's fascinating because I used to teach people the mechanics of networking, and I was just appalled. It was like watching children juggling knives that were on fire. And I'm like, oh my God, stop. And what I didn't realize was the thing I wasn't teaching them was where I was coming from was the belief in authentic relationships. And, it's dangerous when you give somebody who's transactional relationship-based tools, because it's like, oh my God, now they're juggling chainsaws. Great. It's like, stop. You're going to hurt each other, yourselves, everybody.
And I also think it matters significantly where you try these things, right? Because at the end of the day, most what I call power networkers, you're never going to beat it through their thick skull because they've just learned one way of doing it. And the sad thing is networking, for the vast majority of us that have to do it, and let's face it, all of us do it in some regard, whether it's our network in our neighborhood, in our community, our business environment. The reality is, if you're not committed to getting better at it, you're always going to be really bad at it. And the thing is we have generation after generation procreating poor networkers. Elevator pitch, shove a business card in somebody's face, immediately send a LinkedIn request because they just even breathed in your direction. Yeah. And all of a sudden you're expecting them to just be, welcome you into their network with open arms. It doesn't work that way. And especially now, because I think at the end of the day that you can tell even on LinkedIn. I know, you're a big fan of what LinkedIn does and how valuable it is as a resource, but you see so many people do it wrong, right?
Yep.
Hey, I saw this thing and I thought you might be really interested in my product or service. And it's like, I don't even know you. Why would I be interested in your product or service? Now, if you said, hey, I saw that post, here's an idea I took from it, or here's something that really benefited me, I would love to get to know more about what you're doing, the work you're doing. Maybe down the road, who knows? We'll see if there's a fit. But at the end of the day, if I lead with my business intention, those doors stay shut. If I lead with more of a relational mindset where I'm actually legitimately trying to get to know another person, then it's a completely different type of experience. The sad thing, unfortunately, because there's been so many bad people that do that on LinkedIn and even in networking events, everybody is greatly suspicious.
Yeah.
So it takes time to build those, the rapport with that person.
It's funny because I get a lot of outreach, and for the record, I've started to take control of my feed. I don't let the algorithm tell me who to connect with anymore. I've been getting rid of all the transactional, so I'm getting less. But I actually got one the other day where it was so generic. I saw your post, I liked it. Anyways, here's what I do. Would you like to buy it? And and the first ask was, go to my website and watch a 50-minute video. And I came back and I said, no offense, but I don't watch videos for the sake of watching a video. Give me a reason. Tell me who you are as a person. And then I said, oh, and by the way, if this is not a fit for me, let's find out now. And it was just, she wouldn't answer any of my questions, but she kept sending me other videos. And I'm like, okay, we don't need to connect. We don't need to know each other. I wish you well, but your playbook for LinkedIn does not resonate with me.
One of the things that I do is just out of curiosity, if I could assure you we would never, ever do business together, would you still be interested in talking to me?
Yeah.
And the ones that are like, the power networkers out there at a networking event, or the people that are on LinkedIn using it for spam purposes, they don't have an answer to that. They're just like, oh, next victim, right? But the reality is that I think that part of what makes it challenging for people is we're very, very system oriented. We are always looking for the next step. We have to have some sort of action. And the problem is that, actually, I shouldn't say a problem. There's nothing wrong with that, but I try to get people to skew it a little bit differently. Who is this person? What can they teach me? What can I maybe teach them down the road once I've built enough rapport to actually open my mouth and say something? Yeah. And where can I lend value? And is that value in my experience, my expertise, my connections, my way my brain works and thought process and brainstorming? And the reality is when you start to say, like, you quantify it that way, you start going, well, I don't know. And I don't know. Okay, well, now if you are naturally curious and you are willing to, pony up to the bar, so to speak, and take your shot, now you have something to build from, right? But if I just show up and say, hey, Jeff, I have this software company, I think you ought to, like, you'd be so interested in what we do and how we do it. And you're like, I don't do anything that software company touches. Both, that's where I think, both of us would fall short, and ultimately we'd be like, oh, this connecting stuff, this networking stuff sucks.
Yeah.
And it's because we start with the wrong mindset. And so I'm kind of famous for it. When I moved to Austin, I knew not one person here. And one of the things that I did was I, went to these events. I kept my mouth shut, but I listened for what some of the problems were that people were dealing with. And then, and only then, if I had something of value to say, I would say it. And that has really served me pretty well. But you also find a lot of times being introverted, that's not a crutch you can depend on. Sometimes you have to be a little more assertive. Sometimes you have to be a little more vocal. And what I have actually found the best way to do that for myself, and you and I kind of said this before we recorded, but once you identify somebody you want to be friends with, freaking tell them. Like, Jeff, you're someone cool that I really feel like we'd resonate on a number of levels, and that's not BS. This is actually true. Yeah. You come from a really strong connection to somebody I really respect and admire. So there's already 2 wins in the column. And then learning that you're a Star Wars fan and your kids buy you stuff for Father's Day that is Star Wars related, that's like the grand slam for me, right? So I'm like, I'm in. I don't care what you're doing. I'm here to support it any way I can. And that's because I relate to these things that we learn about each other. And I think people get this perception like we've got to have 5 coffees or 10 meetings to actually get to know each other. Jeff and I are proof that we learned that in about 7 minutes before we clicked record. Yep. And from there, that's the foundation from which we build. Now it's up to us to carry that flame forward. But if we do, I suspect some really good stuff comes from it.
Well, and it's funny. The greatest gift I got in my life about networking was from my son when he was 10 years old. He started a new school. His mom was agonizing. Oh my God, he's going to be so afraid. And he walked up to some random kid and said, "Hey, do you want to be friends?" The kid said, "Yep." And he was gone.
That was it. That was it. And why can't we do that as adults? We can. It's just we have these social rules in our head that just doesn't work.
Yeah, there's series of rules. We have to go through these steps, and it's like, oh, we need to get to know you, and it's fascinating. And one thing I will say from my perspective, when I have somebody on who I have a great conversation with, and then they say, "Oh, you need to meet so and so," the answer is always yes.
Yes. Yep.
And if the conversation wasn't flowing, it's like, maybe hold off on that. And when Brian and I talked, he said, "You know what? You've got to meet Steve." And I'm like, okay. So Steve, I will say thank you. Big shout out to G. Brian Benson. Thank you for connecting us. You and I could talk for hours about these wonderful things. Let's bring it to a conclusion so that you can get on with your life. How can people connect with you? How can they find out more about the pond or working with Steve directly?
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. So obviously, the best way is probably through my main website, which is ripplecentral.com. That'll take you to information on my blog, take you to information on my podcasts. It'll take you to our store where you can actually acquire our book. And the pond is actually ripplecentral.com /, that's a little slanty thing, POND. And, my only request there, if anybody signs up and decides they want to go there, we don't sell anything to other members. We're not out there to blatantly self-promote, but we're there to add value. And, that can be articles, that can be where you're getting your influence and your inspiration. But we've got different spaces within the pond. People that are retired, they lose their network when they retire. So we're creating an environment for them. Folks that are in transition, job transition, or thinking about maybe making a change. We've got a career ripple there. We also have a women's group called WOW, which is Women Optimizing Women. These are all arenas that I have always had or been sought out for advice and guidance. And I now have other ripplers that are actually helping do some of the heavy lifting there because they're far better experts in those arenas than I am. But we really are just trying to create an environment where people can come and practice their connecting skills and, get around people that really have a genuine interest in maybe contributing something of value to them in their personal or professional life if they can. So that's those are probably the best ways. And then you can find me, kind of like the sign says back there, at Ripple On. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. I don't dance. Facebook. I mean, you can find me pretty much anywhere, and of course on LinkedIn.
I love it. Well, Steve, it was a real pleasure getting to know you. And I will say your goal today of having a positive ripple in somebody's life is accomplished. You can take the rest of the day off from doing good in the world. But thank you for being on the show.
Well, thank you for having me. It was a real honor. I appreciate it, Jeff.